COVID-19 pandemic brought fear and uncertainty around the world, including Papua New Guinea. For Tai Peng, it was a time of confusion. Conflicting information about the pandemic and even the end of time left him searching for answers. He could either give up or look for answers. Thanks to a simple recommendation from his sister, Tai Peng found something that changed his life.
During that period, my sister told me there was a radio station that just came on that she was listening to also that shared some messages that might help me understand it a bit more better.
At first, Tai Peng hesitated, but when he tuned in, he was surprised that some of his questions were answered. The programs not only helped him understand current events and the Bible's message about the end time, but also covered practical topics.
There was one particular session that I found really interesting and I was listening throughout, and that was about marriage. And it was, I think, covered for about a few weeks, and I actually listened throughout the whole session. And I thought to myself, like, I should have listened. I heard this like a while, like probably while I was younger. But I was grateful that I heard the content, and I tried to share the same message to my children as well.
Thanks to your 2022 13th Sabbath offering, Hope FM was able to strengthen its infrastructure, ensuring uninterrupted broadcasts and producing more local programs that share hope with families like Tai Peng's.
In Papua New Guinea, the radio ministry is very impactful because it reaches everyone in this country, especially in the rural areas, and the main purpose is to share the Three Angels message through this medium.
Soon, Hope Channel TV will join Hope FM in Papua New Guinea. Together, radio, television, and digital media will provide continuous outreach to remote regions, sharing faith-filled programs that inspire change. Whenever Tai Peng had free time, before work, after work, and even while driving, he tuned in. He often lingered in his car, listening to sermons, Bible in hand, eager to learn. Excited, he introduced Hope FM to his family, and soon they were listening together at home and on the road. They were all overjoyed to have discovered the truth about the Sabbath.
Why did it take 38 years before I finally heard this message? And personally, I don't think I would have heard this message elsewhere if it was not for the radio.
So when we listen to it on a radio, it explains more that the 7 days is a day of rest and we should go to church on a Sabbath. So it convinced us to go to church on a Sabbath. I don't think if probably the friends invited us, we wouldn't have gone. But because we heard it from the radio, so we listened to it and it convinced us to go.
Tai Peng's family is just one of many in Papua New Guinea that has been blessed through your 2022 13th Sabbath offering. Please continue praying for his family as they grow in truth, and for the ongoing work of Hope Channel and Hope FM as they reach more lives across the country.
Thank you for your support through the 13th Sabbath offering.
Good morning. Want to welcome you to Bowman Hills Church, whether you are here in person or those of you who are with us online. We're just so glad that you're here with us on this beautiful Sabbath morning. I want to draw your attention to announcements that are in the bulletin, and also we have some announcements that are in little flyers. One that didn't quite make it into the bulletin, it's in a very small place, but we just want to draw more attention to that, is that this Friday, which is the 27th of March, there will be a Vespers here at 6:30, an opportunity for praise and worship, and we invite you to join us then. You'll also notice the Rooted in Prayer, and I believe we have a video to share a little more about, we don't have the video, never mind. We do not have the video about Southern's program, but we may have that later. And we just do want to draw your attention to their encouragement for the power of prayer. So thank you for joining us this morning.
I'm getting old. Yeah, Betty, thank you, but you're wrong. As I look up here and I see these children, I realize I told stories to their parents. So anyway, before I get into the story, I've got something to say that some of you may not know exactly what I'm talking about, but that's okay. That's okay, because there's a few people right here in front that need to hear this. Y'all are the best wood stackers I've ever seen. Thank you. You can ask later, and they'll fill you in on the rest of it. When I was about 10 years old, my oldest sister married this ugly, oh my goodness, brother-in-law of mine. His name was Darden, and I loved Darden because he loved to fish just like I did. It was Easter weekend, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. We were going to have this big giant meal that my mother seemed to enjoy cooking for everybody, and she wanted everybody to come to her house. And then Daddy was going to eat. Then he was going to the bedroom and close the door, and that meant, don't bother me, I'm resting. Mother would grab her two daughters, and they would head to what we call the back room, and then we wouldn't see them for the next few hours. So that left Darden and myself. And I knew what I wanted to do, and that was go fishing. Daddy said, Bruce, please don't go. He said, it has rained so much, and everything is muddy, and why do you want to go down there, you know? Get your Sunday clothes muddy and stuff, and please don't go. I said, Daddy, you can imagine. We've all been there, right? Daddy, please. And so he says, all right, go. And then he looks at my brother-in-law, and he says, you take care of him. Well, he was 10 years older than me, you know, and so he was a grown man. So we jumped in his car and grabbed our fishing poles and everything, and we took off down to the Chattahoochee River. And as we're pulling up to where we're going to park, I saw smoke billowing up, and I knew right quick what was happening. My good buddy, Eli Davis, that y'all may have heard me tell stories about before, Eli was down there fishing already. And so I couldn't wait. Me and my good buddy Eli and my brother-in-law Darden. And so we go down there, and in just a few minutes, we've caught a fish, and then I'm going to get him and put him on the stringer and stuff like that. Well, guess what? Within 5 minutes of being there, my feet slipped out from under me, and I hit in that South Georgia red clay, and I just rolled right out into the edge of the river, and I am muddy from head to toe. I am soaking wet. It wasn't so warm, it was cold, and my brother-in-law is just standing there. Oh my gosh, he couldn't believe what had happened, because he was responsible, not me. He was. So we're thinking, what are we going to do? How are we going to go back and tell Emmett that he'll see what's happened? And so he says, come on, I got an idea. And he had a blanket in his car. So he had me take off my clothes, wrap up in that blanket, and we jumped in the car, and we didn't go back to our house. We went to the laundromat uptown. And for a quarter, he ran my clothes through the washer. We didn't have any soap. It didn't matter. We just wanted to get the mud washed off. Threw them in the dryer. Seems like the dryer was a dime. Is any of y'all ever use that? Yeah. You know, I don't know how many minutes you get. But wasn't long after that, I was able to put my clean clothes back on, and we go home. And we don't say a word to anybody. It's our secret. Sunday morning, remember now, I didn't grow up an Adventist, so I went to church on Sunday, Harmony United Methodist Church. And all the men, the family's all there, everybody, and we're all standing outside, and the ladies and the little children have already gone in so they can get the Sunday school rooms ready and stuff like that. And up pulled my friend, Eli Davis. And as we're all standing out front, Eli comes up and he's looking, and he looks right at me, and he says, "Boy, the last time I saw you, you were in the middle of the Chattahoochee River." And my daddy looked. And all he said was, "We'll talk about this when we get home." And we did. Hey, just let's always remember to be honest, Somebody said something about sins of omission and commit all of that stuff. I don't want to talk. Let's just be honest, Hey, and we all make mistakes. So anyway, and accidents happen. That's the main thing you need to remember. Accidents happen. So anyway, I need somebody to say a prayer. Who's ready? Well, then I will. Father, thank you for these boys and girls, and thank you for this church and a great Sabbath. Keep us safe keep us safe in all that we do, Lord. Thank you for loving us. Amen.
When I was younger, my mom, she used to tell me about how she grew up in one of the greatest generations ever. The great bell bottoms and the awesome generation that she grew in, the clothing that they had, the things they do. They used to be latchkey kids walking to school because it was safe, playing outside, which I would tell her, "Mom, if I had 7 channels that were all in black and white, I would also play outside." Just the greatest generation. And then my grandparents, they used to tell me something similar. They would tell me too, when I was a kid, my generation, such a strong, hard-working generation. My grandma would tell me stories of how she would hike 2 miles uphill in the snow to drag her siblings to church. And then 2 miles uphill in the snow to get back home. No, I'm just kidding. She wouldn't say that end part, but yeah, 2 miles uphill to church to bring her siblings to church on Sabbath. Such a strong generation. And I thought to myself, there's no way that both of them could have the greatest generation ever. There's just no way. And so then I got a little bit older, and my little brother was born. He was born a generation after me. He was born 10 years after me. And I see kind of his generation and the things he does and the things that his generation does. And I think to myself, man, I live in the greatest generation that ever existed. My generation is the best generation ever. Not really. But it's interesting. It's funny to see the differences between all these vastly different generations and how crazy technology has brought us between these two generations. Like, for example, did you guys know, I looked this up. This is Google AI certified, okay? Google AI certified. How many of you were born in 1950s, if you would care to admit? Anybody in the 40s? Okay, anyone from the 30s? Oh, nice. Wow. Okay, yeah. Well, in the 1950s, according to Google AI, one of the common games or most popular games amongst children and young people was kick the can. Kick the can. Did any of you guys play that game? I would love to know what that game is, because I'm not going to lie, I almost would rather read a book than kick a can all day. There's got to be more to it than just kicking a can. One of the most common games today that young people play is Fortnite, Minecraft, and Roblox. Any of you guys know what that is? Yeah. kick the can to playing on a computer. It's crazy the different challenges that these different generations have faced, and how in each generation there's different giants, so to say, different challenges that are faced and have to be overcome. And each generation takes these as accolades as to why they're the best generation. One generation goes through war and says, we're the greatest because we persevered. One generation repairs the nation after war and goes, we're the greatest because we repaired the nation. One generation goes through a pandemic and goes, we're the greatest because we survived it. But one thing that every generation has in common, one giant that every generation has faced, every generation in this room, from the oldest to the youngest, one giant that has still yet to be overcome is the fact that we are still here on this earth, that we have not yet fulfilled the Great Commission, that Christ has still not come back a second time. One of the greatest giants in our world, and every generation faces it the same. That's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to overcome this giant, how to confront this obstacle of sharing the gospel, the good news of the gospel to the whole world so that Christ can come back. And we're going to be talking about old wisdom and young faith in that. Now, I preached a sermon similar to this one, using similar terms, different content, but similar terms, about a year ago. And let me tell you, I'll say the same thing I said then. I'm not here to offend anyone. So if I'm going to use the terms old people and young people quite a bit. And whatever group you choose to identify with today, that is completely up to you. So if I say old person and I look at you, please, I am not trying to call you old. I'm just looking at you. That's it. If I say young person and I look at you, I'm not trying to call you young. I'm just saying it. And so we're going to look at 6 different principles, 3 for young people, 3 for old people, that teaches us how we might be able to work together to overcome this giant. So let's start. We're going to go to 1 Samuel chapter 17. This is the story of David and Goliath. 1 Samuel chapter 17. Now, most of you have heard the story of David and Goliath before. So just a quick recap. There's this war going on, and the Philistines line up on one side of this valley, and the Israelites line up on the other side of this valley. And David's older brothers, 3 of David's older brothers, are enlisted into Saul's army. King Saul is the king at this time. They're enlisted into his army to fight. So 3 of them are at that frontline war front, standing on one of the sides of this valley. And so one day, David's dad tells him, which by the way, David was not allowed to go fight in the army. He was too young, right? He had to watch the sheep instead. And so one day, David's dad sends him on some errands, right? He's basically the Uber Eats for his brothers. His dad gives him some food, and he tells him to load up a donkey or whatever he had, and to take some people with him. He wasn't alone, but to go to the battlefront to bring food to his brothers. And so David gets all the food ready, and he travels over to the front line. And when he gets there, he sees this great Philistine army. And he decides that he is going to leave all the food behind and go check on his brothers. So he runs to the front line, and he's looking, and he's asking the different men that are there at the battlefront, where are my brothers? Where are they? And as he's looking around, this giant pops up. And this giant begins to mock Israel. Now, just so you guys understand the context, and I'm sure many of you know this, but just so we all understand the context of what's going on here. Back then, when one nation defeated another, it was them basically saying, my God is bigger and stronger than your God because my God helped us beat you. And your God clearly couldn't help you beat us. So by Goliath sitting here mocking the army of God's people, he is essentially mocking God by telling them that their God is weaker than his God. So David is sitting there, and he's in this camp, and he's hearing Goliath shout this from the other side of the valley, and he's watching all of these Israelite brethren of his as they cower, as they walk away and turn their heads and are like, man, I do not want to fight this guy. And he sees something wrong, because you see, he was raised in a godly home. And when the Bible he read told him that his God was bigger than any other God out there. His God is the only one and true living God, which means if his God is the only true living God, then that army, God's army, should be able to beat whatever foe comes their way. And so Daniel says this to the men that he's talking to. It says in 1 Samuel chapter 17, not Daniel, David, sorry. 1 Samuel chapter 17, verse 26. David asked the men standing near him, "What will be done for the man who kills the Philistine and removes this disgrace from Israel? Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" David is personally offended on God's behalf. And he goes, why are we just standing around? Who is going to go fight this guy? This guy shouldn't be saying anything. And so as he says this, his brother gets embarrassed by him, kind of rebukes him a little bit. You know how it is when you have younger siblings and they embarrass you. His older brother kind of rebukes him. And David goes around and continues to talk about this among other people in the army there. And as he's talking about it, word gets back to Saul that there's this young boy going around and he is standing up for God and he is on fire. And so Saul calls David in. And this is what is said. David said to Saul, once they meet, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." This young boy, David, not even old enough to be in the army yet, having not gone through the training that the other men have, without the armor and the weapons that the other men have, turns to this king and goes, "Because I serve the living God, I'm going to go fight this guy, and I'm going to win." He sees something that is wrong, and he calls it out. He calls it out with faith and with courage. So lesson number one, young people, when you see something that is wrong, do not be afraid to call it out. In our world, there is a lot, especially in the times that we're living in, there is a lot of room that people give to things that are wrong. We look at it, and our world goes, man, let's just be sensitive about that. Let's be cautious in the way that we say that that's wrong. Let's hold our tongue and just let it run its course. But David didn't do that. When he stepped there in that army, he goes, no, we serve the one true living God. It is wrong that nobody is going to fight. And so since none of you will do it, I'll do it. David saw something that was wrong, and he was courageous in calling it out. And so young people, when you see something that's wrong, do not be afraid to call it out. When you see something that goes against the word of God and the principles that are in the Bible, do not be afraid to go, hey, that doesn't make sense. That's wrong. Now, I do have to kind of put this caveat here. It is important the way in which we do that as well. I'll share this story. One time when I was younger, we went on a mission trip. We were doing God's work, spreading the good news of the gospel to the whole world. And so we were going to go to the Philippines for this mission trip. The problem is it was happening over spring break, but we left about 2 or 3 days before spring break started. So we were going to miss Thursday and Friday of school, and we were in high school. So we were told that we had to go to our teachers and ask them for all of our assignments early to complete them. So we did. We were good, diligent students. We got all our assignments completed early, but there was this one teacher that was just, kind of being a little difficult. And he told us that he would open up our assignments online, and he would allow us to complete them online before we left on our mission trip. And so we were like, all right, great. So we kept on checking our student account online, and every night, Monday night it wasn't there, Tuesday night it wasn't there, Wednesday night it wasn't there, in the airport on Thursday it wasn't there, and then we flew out. And we came back 2 Sundays later, just before school starts on Monday, and we all get we get Wi-Fi back, and we check our grades, and our grades have dropped an entire letter grade, all of us. Oh man, I was furious, right? Because I'm a little stingy on that. One of my friends was like, I still have a B, I'm good. But I was like, absolutely not. No, I need an A++ if I can. I need it. So I go to my to the teacher. We all go, and we ask him, we're like, hey, what happened here? How come we're losing out on this whole assignment that dropped us a letter grade? And he goes, well, I opened it, but you guys never completed it. And we told him we checked, and it wasn't there. And he told us, well, I opened it Thursday night before spring break started. And we let him know, We left Thursday afternoon. There was no way for us to be able to complete it. And he told us if we valued his class enough, we would have gotten the Wi-Fi on the plane and finished it on the flight over. Oh, mercy. Oh, that got me. I was mad at that point. I blew my top. Oh, man. And I knew what he was doing was wrong. I was convinced that it was wrong, and I knew I was in the right. So this is what I did. I was sitting in class, and I decided to boldly call it out. I stood up in class, and I pointed my finger at him, and at the top of my lungs, I told him, "You are the worst teacher at this school. There is no teacher in the world that is worse than you." And I sat back down. Now, young people, do you think that that was a good idea? Definitely not. Was he doing something that was wrong? Yeah, probably. But the way in which I called it out was not helping anything. It would have been much better if after recognizing the wrong, I went to him and I discussed it with him personally, letting him know where I was at so that I could understand him a little better. Young people, when you see something that is wrong, do not be afraid to call it out, but do be smart in the way in which you call it out. Let's go to the next lesson. So this continues, and Saul replies in the very next verse to David, and he says this: "You are not able to go out against the Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." Now, in the story, and I'll be honest, I did this for a while. In the story, we tend to give Saul a hard time, right? We're like, "Saul, how could you? How could you tell this young person that they can't do something?" God is with David. But that's only because we know the end of the story. Let's be realistic here. If any one of us was Saul and a young person came up to us, we're the king of a nation, in charge of an army, and a young shepherd boy came up to us and said, "None of your men will fight the giant. I'm going to fight him." It would be insanely irresponsible for any of us to go, "You know what? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you get out there and fight that thing. When I have a whole army at my command, you go and do it." No, absolutely not. You see, Saul was actually doing something good here. He wasn't gatekeeping, he was protecting. He was protecting David from an arena of battle that he didn't know if David was prepared for yet. He saw this young person with so much potential, so much life ahead of them, and he decided that he wasn't going to send him to an early grave. You see, old people, this is a lesson that we can take from Saul. Old people, it is our job to protect young people from an arena that they are not yet prepared for, especially when it comes to the ministry of God. It is our job as old people to protect our young people from areas of ministry that they're not yet prepared for. I don't know if many of you have ever sat on a board before, on a church board, and maybe even a particular meeting that is particularly contentious. Some of the saints' comments can be a little abrasive. For some reason, just because we're all human, we end up communicating things in not the most loving way not the most of loving ways sometimes. It would be irresponsible for us to go, "Yes, young person, fresh in ministry, newly baptized, loving God, full of life. Let me throw you into that board meeting so that you can see all the nitty-gritty, dirty comments that all these loving saints make every Sabbath." It would be irresponsible. It would also be just as irresponsible for us to tell a young person, without any guidance, without any training, "Let me throw you into an area of ministry," setting you up to fail so that you might have a terrible taste in your mouth about the church later on in life. Absolutely not. Old people, it is our job to protect young people from an arena that they are not yet prepared for. Let's keep going. David then says this. David is told, "You are not allowed to go fight. You're too young." So then David goes, "That's not true. Watch this." And David says to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it. I struck it and rescued the sheep from its mouth. And when it turned to me, I seized it by the hair and I struck it and I killed it." Now let's pause here. How many of you have ever heard somebody that's like, I don't know, between the ages of like 5 and 9 tell you a story? Anybody? How many of you, as you are listening to that story, thought to yourself, there is no way this is true? Anybody? Anybody? Yeah. Absolutely. I can imagine Saul sitting there as David is telling him, I chased a lion down who had one of the many sheep that my father has, just one of them. I chased it down, I hit it, and it let go of the sheep, and I rescued the sheep, and then it came to attack, and I grabbed it by its mane, and I killed it. Saul, I killed it. And I can imagine Saul sitting there with the temptation of going, there is no way that this story is true. There is no way this young shepherd boy defeated a lion and a bear with his bare hands. There is absolutely no way. But David continues. He says this, and notice how he pulls in what God did for him. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them because he has defied the armies of the living God. Oh, the faith of David, the young person's faith. The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of the Philistine. Young people, notice this. David was the youngest of his brothers, and just a chapter before this, he is even left out of a dinner with the prophet of Israel because he is so young. He's too young to be considered anything of worth or value in any, or to be given any major responsibility of worth and value. He's just keeping his father's sheep. But notice that David kept his father's sheep to the absolute best of his ability. I mean, who has ever heard of a boy running down a lion and defeating it with his bare hands? He kept those sheep to the best of his ability. And because he did that, he was prepared to fight Goliath. Young people, do your current tasks to the absolute best of your ability because they are preparing you for something greater. Do not overreach. Do not overstep. I was a younger brother. I know. It is so annoying to watch my older brother get everything first. He gets to get a pocket knife first because he's more responsible. He gets to walk the dog first because he's more responsible. He gets to choose his chores because he's more responsible. I get it. I understand. Feeling undervalued. However, do your current tasks to the best of your ability. They are preparing you for something greater. If David had said, you know what, I don't want to watch the sheep anymore because that's the responsibility for a boy. I'm a man. I'm going to go do something else. He would have never been prepared to fight Goliath. Young people, do not overreach. Do the current tasks that God has given you to the best of your ability because they're preparing you for something greater. Notice this. Saul goes on to say just a few simple words. In the next verse, the same verse, verse 37, the end of it, Saul said to David, go and the Lord be with you. What a change of heart. David just said to him, I'm going to go fight Goliath. Saul said, absolutely not. He goes, yes, I will, because I killed a bear and a lion and God delivered me from them. He'll deliver me from this. And Saul said, okay, go and the Lord be with you. You see, I'm sure there were people in David's age group that were not yet prepared to fight a giant like Goliath. And Saul was right in being cautious about letting David go. However, after listening to David's story, after listening to David's history and hearing how God had used David and prepared him, Saul understood that although some of the young people in David's generation were not yet prepared and qualified, David was prepared and qualified for this specific task. And so Saul decided to encourage him and to direct him instead of being a roadblock to him. Old people, direct and encourage youth in the right direction. And remember that not all young people are the same. Direct and encourage youth. What I mean by that is this. Just a couple weeks ago, I had the opportunity of kind of witnessing and observing a team in our denomination, our division go around to a couple different academies. And when they went to these different academies, they asked the students from the different academies questions about youth ministry and youth Sabbath school and different things like that so that they could improve upon youth ministries and help give better resources to our youth leaders. And as they were doing that, one of the questions that was asked to some of these young people in different academies was, if there was one thing you were to tell the older generations in order to help them understand you more, what would be that one thing? And the only reason I highlight this is because this was echoed in both of the academies that they had interviewed in two separate places, two different groups of young people. And they both said that not all of us are the same. Just because one person in my generation is dumb does not mean all people in my generation are dumb. Just because one person in my generation is lazy does not mean all people in my generation are lazy. And it is also true that just because one person in that generation might be talented doesn't mean all are right there at the same level. Old people, direct and encourage youth in the right direction, in the direction that you see God preparing them for. Not all young people are the same. There's going to be young people who grew up in a home that is a godly home, a Christ-centered home where every day, every night, they read the Bible and had family worships. And they may be more spiritually mature than others in their age group. There may be young people who grew up in traumatic circumstances that required them to mature faster than others. And they may be more mature than others in their age group. And there also may be those young people who we just have no idea what's going on. And that's okay too. Not all young people are the same. And so this is what I encourage us to do, to direct and encourage young people, youth, in the right direction, taking each young person on a case-by-case basis, just like Saul did, examining them first, hearing their story, and when we see the way that God is using them, directing them and encouraging them in the right direction. The next verse says that then Saul dressed David in his own tunic. He put a coat of armor on him and a bronze helmet on his head. So now notice this. Again, Saul gets a bad rep for this because we know the end of his story and we know that he kind of disconnected from God at this point. But Saul is doing the best he can to equip David with everything that he has to give. He sees that David is prepared by God and ready to go, and so he goes, "Go, and the Lord be with you." And then before he goes, "David, let me give you everything I can. Let me equip you with everything I know so that you can be the best prepared to be successful out there on the battlefield." Old people, this is another one for us. Old people, it is our job to equip young people with everything they might need to be successful in God's work. It is not a negotiable. It is our job. It is our responsibility to use that old wisdom, that old experience of kicking that can around for 50 years, to give that to our young people so that they might be the best prepared to be successful in God's work. You see, the wisdom of the old and the experience of the old, nobody can take it away from you. From those of you who identify in this old bracket, nobody can take away from you the experience and wisdom that God has given you. God has been preparing you since your youth to have the wisdom and knowledge and experience you have right now, so that you can equip and give everything that God has given you to a young person so that they can be successful in God's work, avoiding the pitfalls that got you, avoiding the failures that you had made, so that we can progress the work of God that much quicker. Old people, it is our job to equip young people. It's not their job to do it. It's their job to be curious and to have faith. It is our job to equip them with everything they're going to need to be successful in the work of God. Young people, notice what David does. Saul throws all of his armor on David, and David, I'm sure, was sitting there looking at that armor going, this is never going to work. Like, I've seen this before. I am not used to this. This is never going to work. I've got to operate in my own armor. But David does not immediately go, no, I'm not going to try it, Saul. No, he puts it on. He fastens the sword around his belt. He tightens his tunic, and this is what it said, that David tried walking around because he was not used to them. He tried them out. He took everything he could from Saul, all of Saul's best, and he tried it out to see what worked for him. And after he tried it out, then he determined and said to Saul, I cannot go in these, he said to Saul, because I am not used to them. So he took them off. Young people, seek guidance and absorb everything you can from those who are older than you, using what is useful. David could have cast that armor off before it even got to him, but instead he tried it out. He put it on and he got some experience in it, seeing if it worked. And after determining that it didn't, he used only what was useful to him, which in this case was none of the armor. However, young people, look for the wisdom of those who are older than you. Look for the experience of those who are older than you. Seek it out so that you can be best prepared for the work that God has set before you. God has been preparing these old people since they were your age with wisdom and experience. And they have got that wisdom and experience that can guide you down the right path. Seek guidance. Notice this also, that David, when he came and saw that something was wrong in that army, in that camp, he did not immediately go, I'm going to fight Goliath, and run out onto that battlefield. He first waited until Saul sent him, and then he went. Yes, God was sending David, but God was also using Saul to send David. Young people, old people have a lot of wisdom. They've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. And God is using them just as much as he's using you. Look for their guidance. Look for their wisdom. Look for their experiences so that you can be best prepared for the work that God has for you. And church family, both young and old, this is how we fight giants. This is how we face giants in our world, with old wisdom and with young faith. And I want to read you these two quotes from one of my favorite authors that really drives this point home. The first is, it says this: we have an army of youth today who can do much if they are properly directed and encouraged. We want our children to believe the truth. We want them to be blessed of God. We want them to act part in well-organized plans for helping other youth. Let all be so trained that they may rightly represent the truth, giving the reason of the hope that is within them and honoring God in any branch of work where they are qualified to labor. Old people, your wisdom and experience is what's going to get these youth there. It is what is going to train and equip these youth to be able and equipped to work in well-organized plans for helping other young people. That's your wisdom and experience. And young people, your faith, your excitement, your ability to see what is wrong and call it out and to move forward with courage, that is what is going to allow us to complete the work of God so much quicker. We need both in order to move forward. Both old wisdom and young faith. We cannot do it without one or the other. She goes on to say this in another one of her writings, but about the same topic. With such an army of workers as our youth, rightly trained, might furnish how soon the message of a crucified, risen, and soon coming Savior might be carried to the whole world. How soon might the end come, the end of suffering and sorrow and sin. I want to go home. Young people, you will be the ones that get us there. Your faith, your courage, your excitement, you will be the ones that lead us home, that lead that charge to completing the great commission that God has given us and ushering in the second coming. And old people, Your wisdom and experience is what will equip these young people to be able to go out onto that spiritual battlefield and withstand the blows of the devil, to be able to go out and bring others to Christ. Your wisdom and experience, your discernment, will train them and equip them to work well in the ministry of God so that we can get home so much sooner. Church family, we need old wisdom and we need young faith. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you so much for the story of David and Saul and for the interactions that these two had with each other. Thank you for showing us and giving us a model to live by of how young and old can both work together to complete your mission and your goal. Lord, we want to see you soon. We want you to come back. And so I pray that you might use old wisdom and young faith to complete your work. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.